What if Rias went nuts and actually attacked Issei with her destruction magic? Unlikely allies joined the betrayed ex-pawn of Gremory. Foxy and Cat-like allies with a dragon or two. This is one of my first fictions, so the writing style isn't. Chapter 1, The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DXD fanfiction. Chapter 1. Why? In the old school building, near Kuo Academy, a large and Victorian-looking room is currently being inhabited by a small group of high school students. Rias Gremory stands from her desk while pointing at a brown-haired boy. She has a look of rage as her blue-green eyes begin to dilate into a glowing crimson fog, which radiates upward as if it were fire. Issei, who am I to you? Rias was now tapping her foot against her large desk, as her powers of destruction began to give off pressure and was felt by everyone in the room. Issei, who is standing on the opposite side of Rias's desk, shudders at the question. Is she acting out because of what I said to Revel's mother? Is this a power move? Like maybe she wants me to remember who's in charge? So, an affirmation of her being my president, my master? Or, does she want me to call her by her name? Obviously, I love her, but I don't know. What if she laughs and demeans me for calling her anything other than boss? What if I am just that, her pawn, her property? That could make things very awkward, if she really thinks of me like that. A red dragon emperor, just another piece. That makes her look good, something like that. If I do confess, then, she could use that against me later on, after she rejects me. I can imagine the mockery. She might even kick me out. I don't know what to do. Wait. Fuck it, she has literally tried to rape me in the past, so, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Raising his head from looking down at the floor while he was deep in thought, Issei straightens his posture and then speaks with an emotionless face. Gremory-sama, may I please be granted the opportunity to ask you a question first? Rias looks into Issei's eyes and sees an empty void. They were warm brown, but the spark that was usually there, it was gone. Rias twitches a bit from this stare, but then nods slowly. Gritting his teeth, Issei manages to spit out, "Who am I, to you?" The rest of the group in the room are now gasping except for a giggling Akeno who has a hand over her own mouth. Ada, so bold my little Issei. This is a new occurrence. Akeno then looks back at her king, who looks to be in some sort of conflict with herself. Rias's eyes keep moving from a staring Issei, to each and every member of her peerage. Deciding that Issei needs to be the one to confess, Rias begins to lose it. What an arrogant brat. I've spoiled him far too much. He should worship the fucking ground I walk on, he is supposed to love me. Fine, maybe this will get my point across. Rias begins to daydream about a scenario in which she smacks Issei, very hard. This makes her feel good, as she now has a warm grin plastered to her face. However, reality hits her pretty hard as that grin fades into a frown, rather quickly. Aside from the screams of horror from individual peerage members, mainly Asia, Rias begins to remember the past few seconds in perfect clarity. Scene. A few moments ago. Waiting for an answer from Rias, Issei continues to stare at his master with thoughts that run through his mind like a marathon runner. She looks really pissed. I bet she is going to tell me off. Then I will be ignored like usual. It will be followed up with a berating by the rest of my friends, surely. Well, at least I will finally know where I stand, where my place is. Oh, she is raising her hand and pointing it at me. Wait, why? Rias looked to be charging her power of destruction while pointing her hand at Issei. Akeno was about to rush over toward Issei and force him down to avoid the blast, however she was late in her attempt. Charging at Issei, with both of her wings extended, Black Devil and Black Angel wings, Akeno managed to tackle Issei to the ground in a tuck and roll. This was followed up by an explosion which destroyed the back of the club room. Heaving in and out, Akeno had both of her hands on Issei's face as his hair draped over his eyes. Realizing that she felt something wet and warm on her right hand, Akeno moves Issei's head closer to examine the situation. On the right temple of a now unconscious Issei, a large burn mark was now oozing blood. It seems as though the blast merely grazed Issei, however it was enough to put him down. Akeno screams, "Issei, Asia, come here, please, fix him. I think he is dying." Running past the smoke from the explosion, Asia immediately kneels down and begins her healing magic. Kaneko was the third person to arrive as the other shortly followed, all surrounding Issei as he was covered by a green glow. Akeno looks back up at Rias, who is still standing at her desk, while still holding her hand in the air, the same hand that produced and ejected a deadly blast of destruction toward her own pawn. Akeno scowls, "What the fuck is wrong with you, Rias? Question mark. If he dies, I swear to whoever will listen, I will punish you." Kaneko was the next to speak as she punched both of her fists together. "You won't be alone, Akeno." Coming to realization of what she just did, Rias plopped back down into her chair with both of her hands over her head. Shaking her head back and forth, the king of the Gremory peerage seemed to be having a panic attack. Kiba has his hands on the shoulder of Ravel. "Don't worry, if anyone can help Issei, Asia can, she's the best of the best." Ravel looks up at Kiba and smiles, "Thanks for that." Kiba nods and looks over toward Rias while shaking his own head in disappointment. Zenobia and Irina are both standing over Issei as Asia prays while using her twilight healing. Akeno then looks back at Issei, noticing he is not waking up. "I think we need to contact Searsex, she'll know what to do." Asia nods while continuing her healing. "Please call her. Meanwhile, I will do everything I can to keep Issei alive." Nodding, Akeno stands up, while Zenobia takes her place in holding Issei. "Be right back, it's going to be alright, everyone, we will figure this out." Akeno moves her eyes toward a sobbing Rias who has her head on her desk with her hands on top of her own head. Scowling, Akeno adds, "Somehow." Akeno leaves the room. Ch 1 of 61 Next, Chapter 2, The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DXD fanfiction. Chapter 2. Not cool, Rias, not cool. Scene, Orc, Gasper's room. Graphia, it's very important, it's about Issei. We can see Akeno, in a dark room, sitting on a large and canvassed bed, speaking through a communication circle which was red in color. The red circle glows a bit and then a voice replies, "What happened to him, is he alright?" Akeno now screams into the circle, "No, he is certainly not alright. I am not a doctor, but Issei is in bad shape, even with Asia using her twilight healing. Get Searsex, now." The communication circle abruptly disappears, which makes Akeno even angrier. This was only a temporary moment of anger as a giant red seal began to glow from the floor not a few feet from her. After a burst of red light, we can see two figures. Akeno bows, "Searsex-sama, thank you for coming." We see a white-haired woman wearing a maid's outfit. Meanwhile, standing next to her, we see a tall and red-headed woman, wearing armor, which made her look like a much taller and stronger Rias. Where is he? Searsex ran up to Akeno and grabbed her shoulders. Akeno nods and points toward the door. Meanwhile, in the main room, Asia is crying while attempting to use every bit of strength in order to keep Issei's heart beating. Zenobia is holding Issei tightly while glaring at a face-downed Rias, as she still has her hands over her head. Irina is on her knees while praying as tears escape her violet and puffy eyes. Ravel seems to have kneeled down next to Issei, wishing she had a phoenix tears, then a thought crossed her mind. She stands up and walks toward the corner of the room and sits down on one of the chairs as she folds her hands and looks down at the floor. Meanwhile, Kiba can be seen, kneeling and holding one of Issei's hands, the one that possessed the sacred gear. Diedrig, Red Dragon Emperor, please, are you there?" Kiba seemed to be frantically and, uncharacteristically, screaming at the bare arm. After a few moments of not hearing anything, Kiba starts to break down in tears as he holds Issei's limp and slightly cold hand. Mumbling to himself, as he looks down at his brother's hand, Kiba blurts out a few words. "President, how could you?" At that moment, the peerage hear footsteps approaching from the other room. Lo and behold, Searsex, Graphia and Akeno were present. Searsex and Graphia both rush over toward Issei, as Graphia takes hold of Issei from Zenobia. Searsex on the other hand, flares some of her power which caused the surrounding peerage to back away. Not even looking toward Rias, Searsex has her full attention on Issei and Graphia. "Graphia, what do you think?" Holding Issei in her arms with a hand on Issei's head wound, she looks sadly back at her king. "Searsex-sama, This was an attack that could only be suffered from destruction magic. Before Grafia could finish, Searsx stands up while flaring even more power. Slowly turning toward Rias, Searsx moves a few strands of her long hair from her blue-green eyes while maintaining a stoic presence. Rias, care to explain what happened? Actually, that doesn't matter right now, what matters is Issei. Turning back around, looking down at Grafia, Searsx smiles sadly. I'm sorry, Grafia, I cut you off, please, continue. Nodding, the maid looks back down at Issei. He will physically survive, however, I am not sure about his mind. I only say this because I feel a conflict of energies deep inside of him. In order to get more information, we would need a senjutsu master, someone who can both heal the mind and soul. Nodding, Searsx thinks to herself, well, destruction magic doesn't only destroy the physical, it also can destroy the soul. The problem with it lies in the instability of the magic itself. Therefore, it can be a challenge to assess the damage after such an attack, assuming the victim survives initially. Nodding to herself, Searsx then looks at each member of the peerage. She removes her cold and stoic gaze and replaces it with a warm and sisterly smile. Okay everyone, it's okay, Issei will be okay. So everyone come on over here, let's talk, I want to know exactly what happened. Akino then walks past a hunched-over and silent Rias, who is still in the same position as before. Shaking her head, she continues over toward the rest of the group. Kaneko was the first to speak up once the group gathered round. I can try, I know a little senjutsu. Looking timid in front of her Mao, Kaneko simply kept her gaze on Issei with a frown. Shaking her head, Searsx then places a hand on the Neko's head. I know you want to help Issei, but I know that you are afraid of that power and because of that, you might not be able to control it, therefore possibly causing even more damage to our Dragon Emperor. No, I think it would be best if we sought professional help. For now, let's get Issei on that bed in the room we arrived in, after that, let's let him rest as we have a heart-to-heart in here. Meanwhile, Grafia, I need you to make some calls and find somebody who might be of use. Grafia nods and lifts Issei in a bridal style. She then walks the limp-bodied boy into the next room. Shortly after, she walks out and shuts the door. Grafia then sits down on a chair that she places near the door while pulling her phone from her pocket. Sitting down on a couch, Searsx crosses her legs and takes a deep breath. Well, who wants to fill me in on what happened? Scene: Gasper's room. Laying on the large bed, we can see a sleeping Issei Hyodo. Aside from his breathing, the boy was not moving as he just lay on his back with his head looking at the ceiling. His eyes are closed, however we start to notice tears escaping his lashes. Deep inside of Issei's heart, we are able to visualize the events that are transpiring. Standing on a cliffside, Issei is leaning against a giant redwood tree. As he has his face in both of his hands, screams of anguish can be heard, which echoed through this large and unearthly forest. So that's what I am to her. I should have seen it, she's just like her. Standing not 6 feet away from Issei was no other than Rainier, dressed in her usually BDSM armor. She was leaning against another tree with her hands on her hips. A large and toothy grin was plastered to her pale face. Then, the apparition of Rainier speaks. Serves you right. Now you get to feel what I felt, when you let me die. I guess you wouldn't die for me. Too bad. The fallen angel starts to cackle and spit. You know how to pick them, Issei, you sure do. And you know the saddest part of all of this? Do you? I actually loved you. Oh, no, don't get me wrong. That wouldn't have stopped me from slowly breaking you piece by piece, until you finally died. Oh no, but that doesn't mean that I didn't love you. Just like Rias. Yeah, maybe, just maybe she loved you. But, unlike me, well, the only difference is that she actually fucking killed you. Ha 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 ha. Issei is gripping his head and shaking his head, no. Previous ch2 of 61. Next, Chapter 3, The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DXD fanfiction. Chapter 3. Spirited Away. Scene: Orc main room. Thank you, Kiba, for telling me what happened without allowing your emotions to take hold. Searsx now crosses her legs the other way while adjusting herself. Kiba, who is kneeling next to Searsex, simply nods and rises while sitting down next to Akano. We can see all of the girls in the peerage sobbing while sitting on couches and chairs. Searsex then looks toward the door in which her wife is guarding. Well, let's just hope for the best. On a good note though, Searsex looks back at each member of the peerage. Aside from her own sister, none of you seem to be hurt, so I will take any good news I can at this point. Turning her head now, toward her sister, Searsex's face contorts into one of slight rage, but that changes quickly as she turns her head back toward the peerage. Well, I suppose it's a good time for everyone to get some rest. I will stay here with Grafia and Rias, so please, you've all been through a lot, so. Searsex is interrupted as the little blonde phoenix rushes from her seat in the corner, now toward the Mao while grabbing onto one of her legs. Searsex-sama. Here, use this. It will work. Holding a small teacup up toward Searsex's face, Revel looks to have very puffy eyes. Noticing what Revel had just done, the red-headed super devil softly pats Revel on the head, ruffling her drills. You really are a wonderful girl, aren't you, Revel? Blushing, Revel motions with her arms again for Searsex to take the teacup. Acknowledging this action, Searsex takes the teacup and then stands, shortly after, bowing to Revel. I really do wish your brother had the same sense of honor you have, my dear. Thank you for this. Blushing again, Revel bows back. Nodding, Searsex walks toward her wife and hands the teacup to her. Nodding, Grafia stands and proceeds to open the door. However, the sound of porcelain breaking grabbed everyone's attention, which was followed up by a "Where is Searsex, Issei is gone." Looking into the other bedroom, on the large bed, all that could be seen was Issei's school uniform, neatly folded next to his pillow. Searsex was the one to enter the room next, first looking toward Grafia, then at the bed. What in all 9 levels of hell just happened? Scene: unknown place, inside of the mind of Issei Hyodo. Still standing, propped against the large redwood, Issei is now staring back at the phantom that is Rainier. He has a look of disgust and hatred as he spits out the following. Fucking hate you. I hate you. I hate you. You used me, you broke me. I haven't been the same since you stabbed me. I haven't felt anything, not really, not since I was brought back. I thought by trying to rid my thoughts of you, by delving into porn and breasts, I thought you would go away. But you never left, you never did. Every time I would lay with the girls, I always had this uneasy feeling, almost like I was going to be stabbed again, as soon as I let my guard down. I can't ever be truly at peace, not really. Then Rias, does she not understand? Does she even care? A maniacally laughing Rainier interrupts Issei, of course she doesn't. And even if she did, she fucking killed you. Not only that, she smiled while doing it. You remember that smile, don't you? It was just like mine, wasn't it? Clutching his head again, Issei begins to scream once again. Aside from monstrous laughing from the apparition that was Rainier, Issei added a choir of screams and yells. Then, something happened. Something warm, something soft, the feeling of a heartbeat. This was what Issei awakened to. Managing to sit upward, the brown-haired boy fell immediately into a fit of dizziness which caused him to lay back down. Looking to his left, he was able to get a better view of his surroundings. Rice paper walls and traditional Japanese artwork adorned the room. Realizing that he is resting on a traditional mat-style bed, Issei looks toward the small nightstand located a bit further toward his left. There was a glass of water and a napkin. Feeling incredibly thirsty, Issei reaches for the glass and slowly sips the liquid as he is still laying on his side, while not risking another dizzy spell. The water was cool and refreshing. Placing the glass cup back on the countertop, Issei decides to roll over and look at the other side of this large room. Looking down, as he doesn't want the bed sheets to constrain him, he realizes that what he was touching were not bed sheets. Wrapped around Issei was indeed not bed sheets, no, instead, giant and golden fox tails, yes, tails as in more than one, were covering the boy's body from his toes all the way up toward his chest. On his back, Issei looks toward his right, only to see a very large pair of breasts, practically hanging out of a kimono. Fixated on the most beautiful opai Issei has yet to see, his nose begins to bleed. Immediately, the teen remembers the napkin and then reaches for it on the other side, only to stir the owner of these tails and, oh pie. Turning his head back toward the woman, Issei now looks up, only to see two beautiful and golden eyes, staring back at him. Good morning, Ada. Attempting to jump out of bed, Issei is forced back into his lying position as the fox tails tighten their hold. Don't be so shy, Ada, I am a mother, you know, I've seen everything. Realizing that he was able to feel this soft fur, all over his body, a truth became known. Issei was naked under these tails. Deciding that struggling was a bad idea, Issei calmed down and looked back at this very beautiful and blonde woman. She wore traditional Japanese attire. A kimono that had a yellow sash with black skulls on it was accompanied by an ornamental headpiece. The woman had small and box-shaped eyebrows which suggest she had something to do with being a maiden or priestess of some sort. After getting a better look at his captor, Issei decided to speak up. Ma'am, who are you? The blonde woman squints her eyes and blushes. You may call me Yasaka, darling. And may I ask, what is your name, cutie? First, previous ch3 of 61 next. Chapter 4. The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DxD fanfiction. Chapter 4. Get Some Tail. Scene, Yasaka's castle, Kyoto, Japan. Looking at the woman in front of him, Issei begins to clutch his head in pain. It only lasted momentarily, however, the teen was able to feel a thick bandage, which was wrapped around his head. Looking back up at the woman, she seemed very concerned with what had just happened. But then, Issei focuses a bit on this woman, this fox woman. Then it strikes him like lightning, however, he is interrupted by a sliding sound. The sliding rice paper door slowly opens, which was on Yasaka's side of the room. Turning his attention toward the door, Issei squinted a bit, only to see somebody who was very familiar. Instantly, a golden dart of fluff makes its way toward the bed as the sliding door was still closing. Feeling more pressure around his body, Issei turns his head toward his left, only to see Kuno. She had her face pressed into her mother's tail which was still wrapped around Issei. The little girl started to cry while muffled in golden fur. Issei. Who did this to you? I swear, Mom and I will get them and make them pay. Hearing the muffled declaration, Issei puts on a warm yet sad smile. Placing his hand on the head of Kuno, he softly pats the little ears of this Japanese fox demon child. It's okay, it really is. Thank you for saving me, Kuno. Issei then turns his head, meeting the gorgeous and golden eyes of the ruler of Kyoto. Yasaka-sama, I'm so sorry, it just took me a minute to remember who you were. Please forgive me. Yasaka's smile turns into a mild grin as her eyes open a bit wider. Don't be so cordial, after all, you saved the life of my daughter, not to mention, well, you saved me too. Yasaka ended that last sentence with some sensual innuendos in mind, which Issei clearly could hear. A blushing Issei replies, and I would do it again, without question. Yasaka is now clapping in excitement, but then stops while placing a single hand over her mouth as she giggles. Ahem, well, declarations such as that. Oh my. What am I to do with such sweet words, Sakiryute-kun? Kuno then says something, Mom, how long will it take, for you to make the Opie dragon my new dad? Yasaka immediately begins to laugh very loudly and nervously as she continues to keep a hand over her mouth. Meanwhile, Issei can feel Yasaka's tails tightening even more. Looking down toward Kuno, Issei replies, Are you serious? Were the two of you talking about this before? Issei is interrupted as his body is forcefully moved over, closer toward Yasaka. Before Issei can get an answer from his captor's daughter, he is muffled in between the two things he loves best. The Fox Queen now folds both of her arms over Issei's shoulders, making sure as to not place any pressure toward his wound. Issei can hear a muffled noise coming from Yasaka, however all he can hear is the deep bass of what she is saying, thus he can't quite understand. He is able to hear Kuno responding though. Okay, I know. Yes mommy. Okay, you promise? Really? Yippee. Oh, yeah, I can tell her for you, sure thing. I'll be right back. Issei feels his mat lifting a bit as Kuno leaves his side and out the door. She does this while skipping in excitement. As the little fox girl slides the door shut, Yasaka decides to relax her shoulder a bit as she didn't want to kill Issei from lack of oxygen. Looking down, Yasaka meets Issei's warm and brown eyes as his face is as pink as a lotus flower. "Issei, we have a few things to talk about. Are you well enough to hear me out?" Issei nods, which causes Yasaka's assets to move alongside his cheeks. Yasaka nods and closes her eyes as she lays back in a more comfortable position while maintaining her hold on the teen. "I won't pretend to know what happened to you. But, I was able to feel your spirit, your essence. I was able to feel it being devoured. Knowing it was coming from you, I rushed into action. After all, it would break my daughter's heart if her hero was going to die." Then under the Fox Queen's breath, she mutters, "It would break my heart as well." Issei is able to notice a change in the demeanor of this very kind woman. She looked as though she wanted to cry. Shaking off her feelings temporarily, Yasaka looks back down at Issei while forcing a smile that wouldn't look so sad. "So, you see, I couldn't have very well just let you die. Not only would that be uncivilized, but it would also imply that I, Yasaka of Kyoto, am nothing more than an arrogant ruler who does not recognize valor and heroism. But to be perfectly honest with you," Yasaka's forced smile now turns into a very warm and loving one. "The moment I saw you, when I came to from that spell, standing there with my daughter, I knew. I felt bad about wanting somebody so young, but then I found out what kinds of taste you have in women. Besides, my daughter can't stop talking about you. It's always Issei this and boob dragon that. What can I say? I guess I am what you would call a fan." "Oh my. Ada. Don't look at me like that, you will make an old woman blush." Issei is returning eye contact with Yasaka. He is doing this while maintaining a warm smile of his own. "Damn, if she only knew how much I was perving her after the incident. Guess this is a dream come true." Issei attempts to say something, however Yasaka seems to get very nervous while tightening her shoulders, which muffles Issei once again. Panning out, we see Issei being completely enveloped by Yasaka, all the way up to his neck in tails, as he has a face full of newly escaped and exposed boobs. First, previous ch4 of 61. Next, Chapter 5, The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DXD fanfiction. Chapter 5. Mirror to the Soul, Scene, Gregory. "Just because I know things, well, that doesn't mean I know where Hyodo is. Believe me, I am as baffled as you are. And if you are thinking that I am hiding him somewhere, think again." We can see a large room which seemed to be created from black marble. Multiple computers and other scientific equipment could be seen, spread around the room. In the center, we can see a small set of couches where 3 people are sitting. Sirzex and Grafia are sitting on one of the couches. Grafia, who usually has a very stoic attitude, was now looking incredibly depressed as her gray eyes looked very glossy and bloodshot. Her pale-colored hair was also looking out of place as if it weren't brushed out in days. Holding the sad maid, Sirzex didn't look much better. Her eyes had deep circles under them as her hair was simply tied back in a very tight ponytail. The two of them looked absolutely devastated. "Well, to be honest, I was really hoping you were hiding him. At least I would know that he would be safe." The man who was sitting on the other couch simply nods with his eyes closed. Black hair with blonde tips, he was no other than the governor of the fallen angels, Azazel. "So, was it really your sister? She tried to hurt him?" Sirzex places a hand toward her face while burying her forehead into it. After a moment, she then nods silently. Azazel takes a deep breath. "Well, as if we didn't have enough problems, Rias was the reason for Issei's injury and now the boy has been kidnapped?" Sirzex, still with her face in her hand, nods again. Azazel nods and then pulls out a cigarette. With a smoke in his mouth, he begins to light it while speaking. "So, 2 problems which need 2 separate answers in order to attempt to fix them. Right, okay. Look ladies, I hate to preach the obvious here, but Rias has been acting pretty entitled as of late. I've noticed it, her peerage has noticed it, Issei, well, that's a moot point." Azazel takes a puff and blows a cloud of smoke out. "I think our first and main priority should be Issei. We need to find out where he is and if he is in danger. With that, I will spend every spare resource I have in order to find the kid. I expect the 2 of you are doing the same?" Grafia was the one to say something. "We won't stop until we find him." Azazel nods while looking into the determined eyes of the maid. "Well, then, I have a feeling this will all be very interesting. Most interesting. Where in the world is Issei Hyodo? Scene: Orc. Shortly after Sirzex and Grafia left the old school, the peerage members decided to regroup back at the Hyodo home. Rias refused to move from her desk, even when Akeno attempted to physically move her. They all wanted to talk, they all wanted to understand why Rias would do something as fucked up as trying to kill Issei. She wouldn't speak to them, not a word. Rather, she kept both of her hands over her head as she laid down on her desk. Finally, after almost an hour of attempting to convince her, the peerage left Rias to her own devices. After the door finally shuts, Rias stood up from her desk and looked toward the hallway that led to her other bedroom. Walking casually, as if nothing happened, Rias had a blank look on her face. She was not crying, nor did she look like she was, rather, she just carried on as if it were time to take an early nap. Stretching, Rias makes her way down the hallway and toward her room. Shutting her door, Rias looks in her mirror. He won't ever disappoint me again. Oh, no, I don't think he will. He deserved what he got. When I find him, he will apologize and then he will love me. If I am not satisfied with Issei's apology, then I will simply punish him again and again. Just like when I gave him those 1000 love taps to his behind. I really put in a lot of power for each and every strike. I almost felt a bit of vertigo afterwards, using all of that power, but I toughed it out and cosplayed shortly afterwards. All of you, Akeno, Kaneko, Kiba, Gasper, Asia, Zenobia and I suppose Irina and Ravel, you don't even know the real me. Well, not yet. No more Mistress Nice Girl. A reflection of Rias winks back at herself in the mirror. Well, it's been a long day, yawn. I suppose I can sleep without my body pillow slave for a while. That is, until I find him, which I will. Everything is going according to plan. Yes, that's right. Everything is just fine, it's perfectly splendid. Rias begins to remove her clothes as she crawls into a luxurious canopy bed. Issei, I promise, I will forgive you, in time. Unknown to Rias, her sister had a few of her surveillance team members stealthily bug the entire old school building with a plethora of sound equipment and cameras. They were able to do this while Sirzex was speaking with the peerage in the main room, while Rias was distracted by guilt. Scene: Gregory. Looking at a large monitor, Grafia, Sirzex and Azazel are all gasping at what they had just heard. Grafia was the first to say something. Rias-chan, when did you become so heartless and corrupt? Sirzex has her head in both of her hands as we can see tears dropping toward the floor. Azazel has his mouth agape but then coughs shortly after while choking on his cigarette. Fuck me. Putting the cigarette out in an ashtray, Azazel stands up and looks as though he is going to be sick. There is no way that thing is Rias, at least, not the Rias I've come to understand. I didn't think I could be fooled so easily. It's either because I am losing my mind along with old age, or she is a great fucking actress, like a 10-star one, whatever that means. Azazel then facepalms himself. Well, it's clear that something has to be done about your sister and I don't mean just therapy. Sirzex raises her head and looks at Grafia as the maid uses one of her hands to clear the tears from her wife's face. First, previous ch5 of 61. Next, Chapter 6, The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DxD fanfiction. Chapter 6. Evening bed wrestling, scene, the underworld, Gremory estate. We can see Sirzex, who is leaning on Grafia, as they make their way toward their master bedroom. Sirzex has her head toward the ground as the main door shuts behind them. Come on honey, let's get ourselves into bed, alright? Sirzex removes herself from Grafia's shoulder and proceeds to strip down. Waiting for a moment, Grafia then walks over and takes hold of her wife's armor and places it on a chair. A bit of time goes by and the two are laying together in bed. Sirzex was curled up against Grafia. You know, that one night, it really was special. It wasn't just me, right? Grafia looks down at Sirzex. Yes, it was indeed very special. The two start to close their eyes while both smiling sadly. Scene and memory from the past. The evening Sirzex had a sleepover with Issei. Hey, Issei. Turning his head from the ceiling and looking down at Sirzex, who was laying on a futon next to his bed, Issei smiles. Yes, Devil King Sama. Nodding, Sirzex smiles back while placing both of her hands behind her head. Do you love my sister, Issei? Without a split second, Issei responds. Yes, Zex-sama, I love her very much. Nodding, Searzex asks another question. Do you love her breasts? Without hesitation, Issei replies, yes, oh yes, Rias has the best opie. Even more impressive than Akeno-san. Nodding once again, Searzex giggles a bit, well my dear, I am so glad to hear that. But I have a very important question for you and I need you to be honest with your Devil King, can I count on you for that? Issei sits up and slowly nods as his smile turns into a serious one. Good, good. Alright then, first, Issei, I order you to move over. Blushing, Issei backs up a few spaces in his king-size bed. Nodding at the action, Searzex stands from her futon and proceeds to get into Issei's bed. Issei is sitting with his back firmly planted against the headboard with a very nervous look in his wandering brown eyes. After she gets comfortable, with her back to Issei, Searzex then raises her arm and snaps her fingers. Issei looks toward his bedroom floor, only to see a familiar teleportation circle appear. After a blue flash, none other than Graphia was standing with a courteous bow. Graphia, our Issei has agreed, so, you know what to do. Standing up straight, the maid had a slight grin on her lips. Yes, Searzex-sama and Issei, thank you. Tilting his head at the maid, Issei was at a loss for words. Graphia made her way to the bed and proceeded to crawl over Searzex and past a cowering Issei. She then made her way under the covers with her back toward Issei. Still sitting with his back against the headboard, Issei looks to his left, then his right while not knowing what the hell was going on. After a moment, both women flip over and face Issei. This causes the most beautiful exhibit of bouncing breasts Issei has ever seen, which causes a nosebleed. Placing both of his hands on his nose, Issei's brain is now the definition of discombobulation. Before he knew it, a pair of arms grabbed both of his legs. As his knees were currently touching his own chest, Issei was pulled down and under the covers before being engulfed by two pairs of powerful devil breasts. Meanwhile, back to reality as we see tossing and turning. We can see Searzex and Graphia, holding onto each other as they roll around in their large bed, presumably having the same dreams. Issei, don't struggle, come on, it's just your Oni-sama. Graphia, he won't, make him stop moving, restrain him, it's hee, an order. Scene, Yasaka Castle, Ada, you are so comfy, truly, I can't seem to let you go dear. Oh my, somebody stop me, Ada. We can see Issei struggling as his face is being obscured by a pair of foxmelons. Meanwhile, his body is still covered from shoulder to toe in nothing but golden foxtails. Mmmmua. Those are the only words to escape Issei as he endures Yasaka's bone-crushing hug. Knock knock, looking toward the door, the yokai leader changes her warm and smiling face to that of a respectable and high-class Japanese woman. This would normally be the case, however, she refused to release Issei. Yes, who comes to my room this time at night? A reply comes presumably from a female guard. Yasaka-san, the cat is here, along with your daughter. Issei hears the word, cat. Issei starts to think, cat? Well, maybe the girls found me? That is assuming Yasaka-san is talking about Kaneko. Issei shudders. I don't want to see them, I don't want to see Rias. Smiling politely, Yasaka replies, please, let them in. Not wanting to be seen like this, especially in front of Rias, Issei protests and struggles, which only gains him tighter cleavage around his face, mouth and nose, as Yasaka giggles and tightens her shoulders. Ada, Issei, my sweet little darling. Please don't wriggle around like that, it tickles, Ada. As Yasaka finishes her sentence, a small grin could be seen. The sliding door opens. First, previous ch6 of 61. Next, Chapter 7, The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DxD fanfiction. Chapter 7. As luck would have it. Scene, Yasaka Castle, Kyoto, Japan. The sliding door begins to slowly shut as two figures can now be seen at the entrance. The first person was a little girl, wearing a white priestess outfit with red edges. She has blonde hair and fox ears along with her mother's signature golden eyes. This was no other than little Princess Kuno, the daughter of Yasaka, who is queen and ruler of Kyoto and the entirety of the yokai faction. Meanwhile, standing next to Kuno, we see a black-haired woman in a black kimono. She was clearly Nekomata as her black cat-like ears were extended. Keeping her long black hair in two long hoops, the woman had a natural lustful aura to her. Her cat-like eyes had slits for pupils, not to mention, they were also golden in color. Along with her pale skin and voluptuous body, this cat demon clearly had power. One could see the knowledge and pure physical power ever so casually, just looking into those golden eyes for a moment or two. Kuno had a bright and happy smile on her face, however, her company had a concerned look as the Nekomata was sporting a slight frown. Kuno then runs over toward her mother and Issei while wrapping her arms around her mother's tails. Once again, Issei feels the pressure from Kuno's hug, which calms him down. Even though he is unable to see anything due to Yasaka's intervention, the Nekomata speaks. "Seems like I get both prizes." The Catwoman now grins. Then she speaks under her breath, "Kittens." Looking down at her daughter, Yasaka smiles. "Okay Kuno. Say good night to your Opie dragon because it's far past your bedtime, my little darling." Kuno puffs her cheeks out but then relents with thoughts that make her giggle. "Opie dragon papa." Yasaka relaxes her grip a bit, which allows Issei's head to be exposed as he is breathing deeply. Yasaka lowers Issei down a bit using her tails, which then Kuno kisses the frustrated boy on his cheek and then skips off and out of the room, sliding the door shut behind her. As Issei finally has his head exposed, he manages to turn his head toward the other figure, and what he sees gives him a feeling of calm. It's not Kaneko, it's her sister, Kuroka. I can't believe it. I am actually happier to see a wanted terrorist overseeing a member of my own peerage. What is wrong with me? Yasaka could feel Issei's body relaxing, which prompted her to ease her grip a bit. Kuroka could see the turmoil within the boy's soul, more so, when he looked at her suddenly. But then, he seemed to just calm down, almost as if he was happy to see Kuroka. He didn't smile, but his eyelids relaxed and his spiritual energy seemed to be harmonizing with his soul, much better than it had compared to moments ago. Kuroka was able to feel all of this at once, which turned her frown into a perplexed and stunned look. Issei simply turned his head back toward Yasaka and looked up at her. Why, Yasaka-sama?" Looking down at Issei with a warm and motherly smile, Yasaka nods. I did something wrong. I think I did something to President. Now she wants to kill me, I think. You see, oh damn. I honestly thought she had killed me." Issei looks down with his eyes closed. It's my fault. I should have just asked her what her orders were. Order me to love you. Order me to just be your pawn. Order me to do what you want. And then, I should have not spoken when Phoenix-sama asked me to take care of Ravel. I should have been stronger. If I just did, or, if I just was, what the president wanted, maybe she would have, me. Realizing that he is vocalizing his thoughts, Issei starts to shake his head back and forth in shame. Tears are being ejected across the room as a result of his panic attack. Then realizing who he was talking to, "Oh, shit, I am sorry. Why did I say that? Yasaka-san, sama, Issei is silenced forcefully by another deep and powerful hug. Screaming at the top of her voice, Yasaka loses all forms of mannerism. You did nothing wrong. How dare you talk about yourself in such disrespect? I will not allow it. Now on her tiptoes as her black hair seems to stand up straight for a moment, Kuroka then walks closer toward the two who were still locked in a very tight embrace. Issei was sobbing while Kuroka had her eyes closed while biting her own bottom lip in anger. No, she was not angry with Issei. No, she was rather enraged with a specific red-headed high-class devil. Kuroka was able to feel this change in energy, so she immediately put her hand on Yasaka's shoulder. The blonde fox looks to her right and at the Neko. You know what, I think I get it, I really do. Consider myself under your care from here on in, Yasaka-sama. Also, regarding our original deal, consider it null and void. The Fox Queen changes her attitude into a very warm and motherly one, once again. Nodding, Yasaka places one of her hands on Kuroka's, which was still placed on the Fox Queen's shoulder. Thank you, Kuroka, I gladly accept you as a part of this family. Yasaka then winks at the Catwoman, then looks back down at a sobbing and crying Issei. Leaning over toward the Nekomata, Kuroka puts a hand over her mouth and whispers, "If you play your cards right, well, you can still get everything you want, but it must be Issei's decision. He must be willing and not under any sort of duress. I will allow that. All I ask from you, it's simple, don't cause any more damage to his fragile psyche. Instead, I want you to aid me in repairing it. Can I count on you, fellow sister, Kuroka?" Turning her head while blushing 3 different shades at once, the Catwoman smirks and nods. Kuroka then looks down as well, noticing a broken-hearted and confused kid, rather than just a powerful Securite who could provide a good bloodline for her many uses. "I feel guilty, it seems as though I may have had the same mindset as some of his previous teammates. No, I will woo him, slowly and surely. It will involve companionship rather than what I had planned earlier on. He is not just breeding stock and he deserves respect, especially in his current state of mind. I can feel the turmoil within his soul. To do anything aside from being there for him, well, that could be catastrophic in many ways. After all, he has access to the Juggernaut drive, and along with his unstable emotions, that could lead to something that I don't even want to begin to imagine." Nodding to herself, Kuroka then moves her hand from Yasaka's shoulder, down toward Issei's head and on his bandage. Yasaka is watching the Nekomata with great care as Kuroka begins to close her eyes while focusing on the damage within the deep soul of Issei. First, previous ch 7 of 61. Next, Chapter 8, The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DxD fanfiction. Chapter 8. Table Etiquette, Scene, The Underworld, Sea Tree Mansion. No, what a bad Rias-chan. My poor Issei. He is supposed to be my nemesis in the upcoming Milky Spiral series. This is terrible. Hey, why am I only hearing about this now? Seraphal Leviathan is now kicking her feet up and down as her legs don't quite reach the floor from her little pink throne. Speaking through a communication circle, Graphia replies, "I do deeply apologize for only telling you this information as of now. However, it was indeed crucial that Sirzex received the information regarding Hyodo and Rias, when she did, therefore we were able to act accordingly. Essentially, we caught Rias's hand in the cookie jar." Seraphal puffs her cheeks out and swings her heart-shaped staff around erratically. "I don't care about that. I want to know where my boob dragon-kun is." Seraphal then ends the transmission as she throws one of her shoes at the communication circle. Still with her cheeks puffed out, the mouse super devil is heaving in and out while thinking about what to do. Rias, wow, I never would have thought. I wonder if my little Sona ever noticed anything strange about her best friend? Now rocking back and forth in her little throne, Seraphal decides she needs to do something herself. Changing her attitude and her body language, Seraphal raises her wand in the air and chants something. Magical girl transformation powers activate. Seraphal is now engulfed in bright light as she begins to levitate from her pink and fuzzy throne. While this happens, we hear some very familiar, Milky-chan, music playing in the background. Seraphal goes through the stereotypical Sailor Moon transformation with all of its flashy and overly dramatic fashion. Once the light fades away, we can see a very respectable Seraphal Leviathan, who is now wearing a pair of glasses with a gray business suit. Producing a mirror from thin air, the Super Devil now strikes a few poses and seems satisfied with the results. Smiling and nodding, Seraphal now creates a teleportation circle underneath her feet. Scene: Yasaka Castle. Kuroka removes her hand from Issei's bandaged head with a look of horror as her eyes looked like a deer in headlights. The boy himself looked as though he had lost consciousness once again. Yasaka notices this and tilts her head, questioningly at both Issei and then Kuroka. She does this while softly, but firmly, tightening her tail's grips on Issei while bringing him into a much deeper and supporting hug. Kuroka then looks back at the fox. Composing herself, the Neko then closes her eyes while she takes a very deep breath through her nose and then releases it from her mouth. Huge breath Yasaka-sama, as I told you before, his soul is very unstable due to his encounter with a specific someone's destruction magic. Well, like the nervous system for example. Compared to most tissues on our bodies, our nerves are very complex. Because of this, Nerve damage can take the longest amount of time in order to heal from said damage. Well, like the nervous system, the soul is also very sensitive. With that, the Red Dragon Emperor must now stay close to areas that give off life energies. We made the right decision in removing his evil pieces, however, his recovery will be long. Yasaka nods. Kuroka continues. I can use my senjutsu to repair and heal the boy's soul. That won't be an issue, however. Yasaka then gasps, however? Kuroka nods. Any damage that I am able to heal can easily be undone if Issei were to leave the crossroads of the ley lines, in other words, your temple. Though he may move freely around Kyoto after some time, that can only be temporary as his healing would then be at a standstill due to the lack of concentrated energies. In other words, Issei leaving the temple would not undo my work, however, his healing would not progress any further until he returned. Yasaka replies. That shouldn't be too hard, after all. Even if Issei-kun were to leave Kyoto, as long as I was by his side, I think that would suffice in place of this temple. I only say this because I, Yasaka, control the ley lines of this entire city and they go where I go. Kuroka tilts her head in surprise. Is this true? Yasaka proudly nods while rubbing Issei's exposed hair with one of her hands. It's actually the reason I can't leave Kyoto for long periods of time. 3 days are my limit, then I must return. Kuroka nods. Essentially, you could be Issei's life battery, if he were to ever leave Kyoto again. And considering the damage and the work I have to do, I honestly don't see Issei ever leaving this city. Not in at least 300 to 600 years I would imagine. Yasaka looks down at her sleeping dragon with a warm smile. Well, Issei, welcome home. Scene. 1 hour later, we pan out while noticing a large room. Just like the sleeping quarters, this room was also adorned with traditional Japanese artwork. In one corner, a large bonsai tree could be spotted, next to a set of katanas. On the opposite side, we can see an indoor water fountain that uses the traditional bamboo chute. Every minute, a "nop" could be heard as the chute fell onto a rock, once it was full of water. In the center of the room, we can see 3 figures, all sitting on toga mats. Yasaka, Kuroka and Issei were sitting in a semi-circle around a small table which was adorned with tea, cakes and sake. Issei, who was wearing a traditional white Japanese yukata, was sipping tea. His hair was damp, which suggested he recently bathed. Meanwhile, we can see Kuroka, who is slowly sipping sake out of a bowl while eyeballing the sakiryute. She had a small smile which she kept hidden whenever Issei would look back at her. Yasaka, on the other hand, was eating a slice of cake as she maintained a constant and warm blush. Her manners, however, didn't go unnoticed. She was very elegant in the way of table etiquette. This showed in her graceful movements. Issei was unable to notice Kuroka looking at him from the side as he was clearly focused on the dance, which was Yasaka eating cake. Realizing what the kid was transfixed on, Kuroka then gets mildly jealous and decides to scoot closer toward Issei. Feeling the body being pressed against him, Issei blushes. Can't say that I ever had a problem with Kuroka's looks. But, it's going to be awkward, with Kaneko and all, assuming I ever see any of them again. Shaking off his depression, the teen attempts to look at this situation as a new opportunity. Then it hits him. Diedrich, I haven't heard anything from you. Not once. Are you there, partner? First, previous ch8 of 61. Next, Chapter 9. The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DxD fanfiction. Chapter 9. No apologies needed. Scene, Kuo Dormitory number 6. In a modest bedroom, we can see Sona Citri, sitting in a computer chair at a desk. She is typing on her laptop computer, however she gets interrupted. Adjusting her glasses to focus more on the teleportation circle that was appearing on her bedroom floor, the girl uncharacteristically gasps. Shine running over towards Sona at ungodly speed was no other than her big sister, Seraphal Leviathan. The super devil had overly dramatic tears falling from her pink eyes as she wrapped her arms around a nervous but annoyed Sona. Sona-chan. It's terrible. Sona now tilts her head while looking down at her sobbing sister, who had her face buried in Sona's modest bosom. What do you mean? Seraphal, what's wrong? Lifting her head and looking at her sister, Seraphal now has her cheeks puffed out. Sarah-chan, or Oni-chan. Rolling her eyes, Sona simply nods with an emotionless face. Well, what's the problem? Seraphal then stands up straight while releasing her little sister. Composing herself, the Mao devil walks toward her sister's bed and sits down. Taking a deep breath, Seraphal then replies, "It's about Hyodo-kun." Adjusting her glasses in a nervous tick-like fashion, Sona's stoicism now turns into a look of worry. "What do you mean? What's wrong with Issei?" Almost jumping from the bed, Seraphal was very surprised to see this outburst from her normally indifferent sister. "Calm down, Sona-chan, it's going to be all right. First, I don't want you to jump to any conclusions or do anything rash. If you can do that for me, I will continue. Deal?" Without a second thought, Sona nods. "All right then, when I told you this was about Issei, well, it also involves Rias." Gasping, Sona puts a hand over her mouth. "I think that Rias-chan is sick. She attacked Issei. I don't mean something like a punch or kick. No, this was a killing move. Rias used her powers of destruction to kill Issei." Sona jumps up from her chair and points at her sister with an expression of shock and worry. "It can't be, please tell me you are playing a joke on me." Seraphal shakes her head no. Sona then crashes back down on her chair with both of her hands covering her face. "I know it sounds bad, sister, I know. But the good news is that Issei is not dead." Sona raises her head with a sad smile. "Really?" Seraphal nods. "Yup, he is indeed alive." Seraphal then changes her smile into a frown. "But..." Sona changes her smile to something rather worrisome. "Well, Issei is Mia. He was kidnapped under Searzek-sama's watch." Sona jumps up again to her feet. "What?" Scene: Yasaka Castle. Kuroka looks at Issei as she can tell that he is panicking about something. Yasaka also notices this and tilts her head as she wipes her mouth with a napkin. Meanwhile, Issei is deep within his own mind. "Diedrich, seriously, dude, where are you? Please, say something. I can't feel you anymore, no fire, nothing, just darkness. Dude, please, come on. Don't tell me that you abandoned me too." Knocked out of his thoughts, Issei notices a soft hand touching the top of his head. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I was miles away just now." Realizing that Kaniko's sister, Kuroka, was touching him, Issei attempts to put on a carefree smile. However, Kuroka sees right through it. Moving her hand from Issei's head down to one of his arms, Issei follows her gaze toward said arm, which was now being caressed by Kuroka. Hoping to see a red glow, a green glow, anything, Issei only saw his bare arm and Kuroka's long nails, slowly moving up and down his skin. "You know, Issei, we actually have quite a lot to talk about, starting with a few things involving your body." Issei looks at Kuroka's face, however her eyes are glued to his arm. Yasaka was the next to speak. "Issei, in order to save your life, I had to do things that I am not proud of." Turning his head from the Neko to his now benefactor, Issei gains a serious look. "To be honest, I am a civil woman who believes in grace and patience." This changed momentarily. "As I could feel the unrest in your soul, something happened deep within my heart. I acted rashly and simply took you from that vile creature. Oh, I do apologize. Not for calling Rias Gremory a vile creature, but for taking you without your permission. As luck would have it, I came across Kuroka here, who was beyond willing to help me in repairing the damage to your soul. Yes, Issei, your soul. Rias did more than simply hurt your body, she did much, much more." Issei nods while attempting to not break down again. "So, you see, in order to do what I did, I had to do something else that makes me feel dirty and terrible. Issei, I removed your evil pieces. I did this for a few reasons." Issei looks down at his own body, trying to notice any difference in his physical being. However, he was brought out of his thoughts once again as Yasaka continued. "Those pieces became corrupt the moment their master's intent was felt and recognized. It was a catalyst of sorts, brought on by the unstable nature of destruction magic. So, in order to save your life, I did what I did. Again, I am sorry for not asking permission, but timing was crucial. Also, to be honest, I was worried that Rias and her family might track you because of those pieces, however, that was only an afterthought." Issei is no longer nodding, rather he is perfectly still. His face is completely stoic. Kuroka puts one of her arms around Issei's shoulder, which causes Issei to flinch at first. Widening her eyes, Kuroka can feel something akin to post-traumatic stress disorder. Kuroka was able to get the slightest images of Issei being repeatedly stabbed by spears of light, along with one large red flash. The pain that came with those attacks were also felt all at once. This causes the Nekomata to scream in agony as she is now curled on the floor in a fetal position, with both of her hands over her eyes. Yasaka stands immediately and rushes toward Kuroka. Issei, on the other hand, is still sitting in his original position as his eyes stare off into nothingness. First, previous ch 9 of 61. Next, Chapter 10, The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DxD fanfiction. Chapter 10. Resonate, Scene, Kuo Dormitory No. 6. Pacing back and forth, we see Sona. She is walking from one corner of her room to the other with her head facing the floor. Serafal is still sitting on the bed while she is checking her phone for any leads. Shortly after the conversation regarding the disappearance of the Red Dragon Emperor, Sona went silent while her methodical mind began to scrutinize each event that led up to Issei's Mia status. Meanwhile, Serafal was relaying orders to her subordinates in the underworld via text. As of now, the Mao is checking her messages for any updates. Nothing. Shit. Scene, Gremory Estate Underworld. Don't you dare. Big sis, don't you dare take them from me. I won't let you. One day, I will take your place, you'll see. Oni-chan, I love you. Please, don't take them. Bring me Issei. Yes. Yes, you can have my peerage, okay, but you must give me Issei. Being forcefully dragged from the room by Akano and Kaneko, we can see a large room with a giant fireplace. Sirzex is sitting on a large chair with her legs crossed. She has her head toward the floor with tears falling onto her bare knees. Meanwhile, Grafia has a tablet of sorts, as she begins to type on the glass screen with one hand. On the shoulder of Sirzex, we can see Grafia's free hand, softly gripping as a measure of support. Kiba, Zenobia, Ravel, Irina, Rosweiss and Gasper were all present and sitting on different couches. Kiba was in tears. Zenobia had both of her hands on one of Kiba's hands, gripping tightly as she had a look of defeat plastered to her own face. Gasper was not crying. He was sitting up straight with his eyes trained on a dragged Rias. Irina had both of her hands together as she prayed silently as tears rolled down her closed eyes. Rosweiss had a look of shock, so much so that her pale features were doubled, as if that could be possible, as if the poor woman had seen a ghost. The Valkyrie had her jaw agape. Lastly we see Ravel. She is holding the broken teacup in her lap as she stares at it. Her look is blank and translucent, the gleam in her eyes has extinguished. Ravel was in a very bad place right now. Sirzex finally says something. As of this moment, every single devil in this room is now a free devil. Your contracts involving my sister are no longer a factor for your individual futures. Whatever you choose them to be, you are free to do as you wish. I thank you so much for protecting my very unwell and disturbed sister. I cannot, in good judgment, allow a person, family or otherwise, who shows the traits of sociopathism, to have power of any kind. Therefore, my decision will be final. As far as Kuo, the entirety will go to Sona Citri. That will be all. Sirzex had a stoicness to her expressions while she was declaring her orders. Shortly afterwards, she lowers her head back to her knees. Grafia then stands in front of her husband while facing the ex-peerage. She then smiles warmly and bows. While rising from the bow, Grafia says a few words. You are all beautiful people with wonderful hearts. With that, if there is anything that I or my wife can help you with in the future, don't hesitate to ask. For us, we are in your debt. The group stands and returns a bow as the room goes silent. Scene, Yasaka Castle. Rising from the floor, a very stunned and shaky Kuroka looks around the room. Yasaka had both of her arms on the Neko's shoulders. She did this while turning her head from Kuroka, then a stoic and unmoving Issei. What happened, Kuroka? Are you all right, my dear? Finally able to focus, the shaky cat finally gazes upon the eyes of the concerned fox queen. Then Kuroka starts to spit out a few sentences at a time as her eyes continue to dilate into the thinnest of slits. The pain he felt. It was just like mine, almost, worse. Oh, my gods, Yasaka, he was killed. Before, by a fucking CRA. crow. She used him, made him, think loved him. And, Yasaka closes her eyes and makes a cringe as she backs one of her hands and firmly slaps Kuroka across the cheek. Slap, feeling pain. This brought instant clarity. Kuroka was knocked out of her shock, her own kind of post-traumatic experience via Issei's memories being the catalyst. I am so sorry my dear, but you were delirious. Holding her cheek with her hand, Kuroka looks toward the Fox Queen who has a sad smile on her face. Nodding, the Neko continues discussing her recent discoveries. Yasaka, that crow woman stabbed Issei, over and over. She mocked him as he died. I could feel everything. This event was something that would affect the rest of Hyodo Issei's existence. This, aside from all of the damage he has physically endured for the sake of that president of his, well, the most current chain of events seemed to be the one that finally did the boy in. Yasaka intervenes. When Rias attempted to take his life, Kuroka nods. Yeah. I felt the pain of that blast too, it was not pleasant. Senjutsu is a powerful tool, but it has its prices. The Catwoman looks toward Issei, and right now, what we are looking at is the damaged part of his soul. Yasaka places a sleeve to her mouth as she tries to hold back her tears at the scene in front of her. As you can see, it's just like a catatonic patient. He is not aware of anything around him. This is because there are fragile tiny little pieces of his soul missing, and his own energy is attempting to resonate with it. But because there is nothing to resonate with, we will get episodes like this from time to time. Yasaka sobs for a moment then attempts to speak. Is there anything that we can do to prevent these episodes, as you call them? Kuroka nods. Indeed there is. To put it mildly, Issei's soul must be at peace. Yasaka smiles while sitting next to the frozen red dragon emperor. Is that all? Laying her head on his shoulder, while gripping one of his arms, Issei now has a beautiful and loving nine-tailed fox cuddling with him. Color starts to return to the warm brown eyes of Issei Hyodo. First, previous ch10 of 61. Next, Chapter 11, The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DxD fanfiction. Chapter 11, Cornflakes Guy? Scene, Yasaka Castle. Huh? What the? Oh, yeah, Yasaka-san, hello. Issei is now facing the fox Yukai as the color returned to his cheeks in the form of a rosy blush. Yasaka smiles sadly. Issei notices wet streaks as he examines the golden eyes of Yasaka who is now widening her eyes at the boy's stare. Frowning a bit, Issei speaks, Yasaka-sama, were you crying? Who made you sad? I promise, I will make that person regret it. Issei begins to look around the room while unconsciously holding the Fox Queen in an embrace of his own. One of the boy's arms are around one of the shoulders of the woman as her face was buried in Issei's chest. Scanning the room, passing a puzzled-looking Kuroka, Issei then shakes his head in frustration. Well, who was it? Then reality hits the Red Dragon Emperor like a ton of bricks. Realizing what he is doing, Issei slowly turns his head downward. What the hell did I just do? Well, this can end in two different ways. Finally seeing a pair of golden eyes looking back up at him, Yasaka looks to be in second heaven. Tilting his head a bit, Issei struggles to determine if what he is seeing is either real, or an hallucination. The Fox Queen, Yasaka of Kyoto, head of the Yukai faction, was now blushing and smiling while giggling frantically. Foo. She was doing immature things such as motorboating Issei's chest while making raspberry sounds. The woman was also smelling the teen's bare chest skin with intensity as she pulled his yukata apart. As soon as Issei attempted to release the yukai, 9 separate tails managed to wrap themselves around Issei, which immediately held him in place. Please, ma'am, this is all too forward for a poor hormone-driven teenager. The fox yukai shows an evil grin. Issei's position is now changed, forcefully, into a reverse spooning position with him being the little spoon. As the teen's face begins to submerge into the cleavage of no escape, Yasaka excitedly speaks up. Foo, it's your turn my darling. A few feet away, Kuroka was watching the scene play out. Well, this woman has clearly been alone for far too long. Oh wait, the moon cycle, that's it. She is indeed a yukai fox demon after all. 9-tail or not. I see now. Well, I can't blame her at this point. Kuroka then changes her train of thought. I still need to let Valley and Ophis know that I am resigning. Well, I suppose the two of them should be alright together if I leave them alone. Oh, geese, listen to me, acting as if Yasaka would go overboard or something. Impossible, she is far too traditional and composed for me to think anything otherwise. Well, that would be watching Issei attempting to struggle from a multitude of golden tails while Yasaka was laughing like a madwoman. Maybe I should wait a night, just in case. We begin to pan out from the room with the following. Oh Issei, foo, don't let go of me, this is so much fun. Ya, Yasaka-chan, Sama-san, please, this is just too much. Hey, you two, do you know where I can find some popcorn? This is quite entertaining, nya. Yasaka looks back over her shoulder at a smirking Nekomata. The fox stretches her arms while Issei is still held in place. Ada. I suppose it's late. How about a sleepover, Kuroka? Hearing this, Issei's eyes widen in horror as his face is completely engulfed in pale, warm and giggly flesh. Sleep. How will that even be possible at this point? Scene: Dr. Kellogg's insane asylum for the criminally insane, Underworld. In a large office, which had early 20th century gadgetry all over the place, we can see a man, wearing a lab coat of sorts. He wasn't particularly handsome to any sort of degree. Short and unremarkable, the older man had a very old-fashioned grooming which showed classic facial hair design and late 19th century loop-style eyeglasses, which made his eyeballs look larger than they actually were. The man even sported a pair of large buckteeth which seemed to impact his overly drawn-out speech. Clearly the woman is suffering from a multitude of ailments in which we will indeed cure her. Emphasizing his R's as the man continues to speak, he begins to look at a patient folder attached to a clipboard. Yes, I recommend at least 12 pounds of yogurt on a daily basis. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the large desk, we can see no other than Rias Gremory. She is wearing a patient garb and she appears to be rather enraged. 12 pounds of yogurt? That is ridiculous. I couldn't possibly eat a pound, let alone 12. The doctor adjusts his glasses as he flips a page in the patient folder. Oh, my dear, it isn't going down that end, Rias gasps. Scene: 8 hours later at Yasaka Castle. Hearing a song that sounded very familiar, Issei began to stir from his deep sleep. Not opening his eyes, Issei can hear a very excited Kuno speaking. I never skip the openings, besides, I just love this theme. Shish, quiet my dear, our little Opie dragon is still sleeping. I know you're excited, but try and compose yourself, my little princess. Okay, I can hush a bit. Meanwhile, Issei can hear the lyrics to this song. Opie daisuki doragon koyo shida. Suichi haim no Opie. Wa tadamo sateki da. Doragon Opie Doragon. Momi pochito boin. Takusan Opie aru karedo. Yapara Suichi haim ga daisuki. Remembering the good times he had with his sensei and occasionally Serafal when they were filming this series, Issei thinks to himself, I miss those guys. I wonder if they are doing well? Issei is brought out of his thoughts when the television, that the two girls were presumably watching, stopped playing the series and a loud beep was heard. Opening his eyes, Issei realizes that he has been sleeping on Yasaka's lap, but that was only a momentary thought as the special news broadcast began. Rising immediately, which shocked Yasaka, Issei had his attention on the television. Kunuo complained immediately, I hate interruptions. Issei instinctively placed his hand on the head of the little fox child as she turned around with a smile. With Issei's other hand, he made a shish symbol with his index finger across his smiling lips. Attention, we have a breaking report and update regarding the upcoming rating game. All three people in the room look at the screen. Before we begin our report on the exciting matchup involving the Bales and Gremory, we must make an emergency announcement. The screen now shows a picture of Issei. The Red Dragon Emperor, the Opie Dragon, Issei Hyodo, pawn of Rias Gremory, is missing. He has been missing for over 24 hours. If anyone has any information on the whereabouts of Haidu Issei, please come forward as you will be handsomely rewarded. This is a direct order from Mao Sirzek's Lucifer herself. The screen changes back to the female newscaster who looks to be an Oni demon with red skin. Considering the dire situation, the upcoming rating game will be cancelled, indefinitely, that is until circumstances present themselves accordingly. This is yet another order from your Mao. We will continue to update all of you as information comes in. Thank you for your time and for paying attention to this very special emergency broadcast. All contact information will be posted below. Thank you and good morning. First, previous ch11 of 61. Next, Chapter 12. The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DxD fanfiction. Chapter 12. Ophis. Scene: Yasaka Castle. Issei slowly turns his head toward a nervously smiling Yasaka. She begins to blush. Yasaka-sama, with all due respect, you have some explaining to do. Yasaka turns her smile into a frown as she looks down. Issei, as I told you earlier, I did some bad things that I am not proud of. Well, maybe I took you without anyone knowing. More so, I apprehended you while you were under the watchful eyes of Circex herself, so I am sure that struck a chord with her. But I only did it because I didn't think they would find a way to save you in time. So, you see, I am a bad person. I understand if you. Yasaka is shocked out of her speech as she feels Issei wrap both of his arms around her. The fox looks up with widened eyes as Issei has his face buried in the side of her neck. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yasaka places a hand on the back of Issei's head as she begins to smile sadly. Thank you for not telling anyone. I don't want to see her, I don't want to. As far as Circex, I am sure she is disappointed in me for abandoning everyone like that, but I just can't. It hurts. Just like the other time, when I was, It hurts. I am sorry for lashing out at you like that, it's just so much has happened in such a short time. Kuno, Yasaka, thank you, both. There is no other place in the world I'd rather be right now. So, thank you. At the last sentence, Issei begins to break down in tears. Yasaka tightens her hold as Issei does the same. Kunuo is looking at the couple with watery eyes. So, it was that Rias president lady, she did something to Papa. That is not okay. Bad devil, bad devil. In the room adjacent, we can see Kuroka sitting on a toga mat. She is speaking into a black-colored communication circle. The sigil on the magical item looked to be that of a snake, eating its own tail. So, that's really all I wanted to say about it. You aren't disappointed in me, are you? Kuroka waits for a reply as she begins to look at her fingernails in boredom. The black circle pulses and then a cold and childish female voice responds. I.C. That is regrettable. Hyodo, that was the entity in which you speak. Perhaps you are speaking of the Securite that has the same name. Kuroka looks from her fingernails, now toward the circle while yawning. Yeah, Ophi. What of it? The black circle begins to grow. This causes Kuroka to back up while standing. After a few moments, the circle was large enough for a small person to walk through and sure enough, somebody did. Wearing a gothic Lolita dress and headpiece, we see the ever-elusive Ouroboros dragon in her little girl form. Taking a breath or two, the Nekomata smirks. Ophis, seriously? That was random as hell. You can't be that pissed at me for leaving. The little girl tilts her head as her gray eyes focus on the Catwoman. Moving a very long and black strand of hair from her face, the now known Ophis speaks up. Show me to, Hyodo. Show me to the Securite. Flustered at first, Kuroka begins to shake her head no. First, shish. Second, no can do. If Yasaka finds out that you're here, well, that would just be very bad. Ophis tilts her head the other way. I can feel, the Red Dragon Emperor, he is close. If you won't show me where he is, then I will find him. Kuroka begins to panic as she has both of her arms outstretched. Wait. Okay, fine. You want Issei. I will make that happen, but you must calm down, please, Ophis. The little girl simply places both of her hands on her hips. This better be good, Neko. Scene: Gremory Estate, the underworld. We see a large table with an arrangement of high-class officials sitting in large chairs. From one end to the other we can see Circex, Graphia, Seraphal, Michael, Gabriel, Azazel and Penamwe. Rating games be damned, we need to find Issei. Circex seems to have slammed both of her hands on the large table in anger. Responding, Azazel speaks up. I agree with you, I really do. But, I may have a solution that could act like two birds being hit with one stone. Sirzex nods, continue. Nodding back, Azazel lights a cigarette as he begins his explanation. Well, we may have an opportunity to both find Issei and keep the masses entertained at the same time. They will completely forget about any rating games after they watch what we are going to present. Sirzex seems to lighten up a bit as a small smile can be seen. We will broadcast a live Opie dragon hunt. We can make it an event in itself. Teams can register and begin their searches. Camera crew can follow these teams and report live data. That, along with interviews from some of the major pantheons that Issei has impacted, I think that would be a productive way in looking at this situation. Azazel sits back down. Seraphal jumps up. Yeah. I love it. Great idea. Michael looks at Gabriel. I suppose you could enter too. If you like. Gabriel, the blonde female, who was very well endowed, cracks her knuckles and looks back at Michael with a grin. Well, let's say I find Issei, Sirzex. What would be the prize? Maybe I can keep him. Sirzex looks at this yandere angel with her mouth agape. First, previous ch 12 of 61. Next, chapter 13, The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DXD fanfiction. Chapter 13. Diedrich, scene, Yasaka Castle. Hearing the commotion from the other adjoining room, Kuroka looks at Ophis and places her finger over her mouth, shish. Turning toward the sliding door, Kuroka slowly opens it ever so slightly. Seeing this action, the Ouroboros dragon walks close toward the door while maintaining absolute silence. As we see both women, sitting on the floor next to the sliding door, they begin their eavesdropping. There, era, it's okay Issei. I won't make you see anyone you don't want to see. I promise. You have not a single thing in the entire world to worry about. Not anymore. Issei. Please consider this your home and consider Kuno and myself as your new family. How does that sound? At the declaration, the said fox princess jumps up from the couch while producing a childish victory stance as she places both of her hands in the air with peace signs. That's right Issei. Mom is always right, you should listen to her. We love you very much and not just me and Mom. I mean, I know so many kids that absolutely worship the Opie dragon. You are my hero, Dragon Boob San. Kuroka is tilting her head at the scene in front of her, this makes her internally giggle. Meanwhile, Ophis is perplexed by the exchange of emotions which causes her a bit of inner turmoil. Love? Family? I don't know what those are. Why does this seem to bother me? Aside from Great Red, nothing bothers me. This is annoying. Both girls are drawn out of their thoughts as Issei raises his head from Yasaka's neck while using both of his hands to wipe his tears away. Thank you Kunuo. Thank you Yasaka. I really am happy to be here and I meant what I said earlier. There is no other place I would rather be right now than here with you. Yasaka smiles warmly and nods. Kuno does the same. Then Issei instantly grabs a hold of his left arm. Gritting his teeth in pain, both Foxukai look concerned. It's okay. I think it's just Diedrich. The arm in which Issei is holding begins to glow red. Showing no fear, both mother and daughter place individual hands on each of Issei's shoulders in support. Kuroka feels a hand gripping a part of her kimono. Looking over, the Neko sees little Ophis, holding onto one of her sleeves as she watches the scene in front of her with great care. Meanwhile, Issei's gauntlet manifests itself in all of its glory, while glowing red with green glows coming from the emerald jewels. Partner. Get out of the way, she is going to shoot. Partner. Issei is looking at his gauntlet with tears jetting from his eyes. Diedrich, it's okay. Please, don't, it's over, we are fine, we are safe. The gauntlet begins to lose its intense glow. Meanwhile Yasaka and Kunuo both have looks of excitement, sadness and happiness, all at the same time. Partner, Issei, HMMPH. This is strange, I feel strange, you feel strange. What happened? Yasaka places her free hand on Issei's gauntlet. I can explain, Welch Dragon. After a few minutes of explanations from Yasaka and finally Issei toward the end, the dragon went silent. Issei was holding Yasaka's hand while using his free arm to wipe away the tears he created when he recalled the painful events to Diedrich. That bitch. Yasaka, Kuno and Issei all jump. In the other room, Kuroka also flinched a bit. After I put all of my trust in that devil, What does she do? She throws you away as if you were nothing but a mere servant. And all for what? Not calling her by her fucking name. Issei looks toward Kuno. Diedrich, I know you're pissed. But there is a child in the room, you know. The gauntlet goes silent again. Kuno begins to giggle. I think he wants to beat up Rias more than I do. Then Diedrich replies. Yeah kid. Sorry for the language, but that woman really ruffles my scales to no end. Deciding that hiding was beneath one of the most powerful entities in existence, Ophis stands up while maintaining her hold on Kuroka's sleeve. Widening her eyes, Kuroka attempts to convey her disapproval while shaking her head no. All four inhabitants of the large room now hear the sliding door slam open. As Yasaka, Kuno and Issei turn their heads, Kuroka decides that being dragged on the ground would not look very distinguished and stands up. At the entrance, we can see the Nekomata, holding hands with a little girl with long black hair. Issei widens his eyes in horror once he realizes who this person is. Issei and Diedrich yell in unison. Ophis. The Lolita girl shows no emotion as she stares directly back into Issei's eyes. Meanwhile, Kuroka forcefully removes her hand from Ophis's grip while checking her nails to make sure she didn't break one. Yasaka stands and walks in front of Issei while facing Ophis. She has a very serious look as her stance suggested a warning of pain for those who dare to make another step. Ophis begins to smile. There you are, Hyodo Issei. First, previous ch 13 of 61 next, chapter 14. The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DxD fanfiction chapter 14, Sensei. Scene, Yasaka Castle. The great and powerful fox Yukai had all of her tails outstretched which now blocked Issei's view of Ophis. The black-haired Lolita turns her gaze toward Yasaka as her smile reverts into a stoic look. How dare you enter into my domain without permission? All 9 foxtails now emit blue flames from the tips as Yasaka eyes begin to glow with the same color. This makes Ophis smirk as she closes her eyes. Then, in a black flash, Ophis vanishes from her spot. Growling with a fox-like animalism, Yasaka begins to look around, which causes her large tails to flutter. Issei managed to duck away from one of the fiery tails while hearing the volume of the television increase. Yasaka was also keen to this change in atmosphere and turned her gaze accordingly. Issei did the same. Looking toward the television, as the Opie Dragon TV show continued on with a sing-along, Ophis was now sitting on the ground, not 2 feet from the television with her head tilted toward the right. She was facing the screen while pointing a finger at the Opie Dragon character. Kunuo, who was hiding under Issei's arm, now saw another kid, who was interested in her favorite show. Giggling, Kunuo immediately leapt from Issei's safety, now toward her new best friend. Both Yasaka and Issei's eyes widened as Kuno sat right next to Ophis while pointing at the character on the screen just like the loli was. Yep, he's the best. He is Opie Dragon and nobody can hurt him. You haven't seen this before, have you? Ophis turns her head and looks directly at the little fox girl, who has a bright smile on her face. Yasaka gasps and is about to say something as her foxfire flickers a bit. Meanwhile, Issei gets a personal communication from Diedrich. Partner, I have been asleep for a while, but I think it was the Ouroboros dragon. I think it was responsible for waking me. As you are no longer a devil, it probably would have taken me some time to communicate with you, weeks, maybe months. But, it seems that one, the oldest of our kind, decided to intervene. Issei nods while watching the interaction between Kunuo and Ophis. I don't know what this is. Foxchild, explain this to me. I must understand. Giggling, Kunuo grabs the hand of Ophis and shakes it in a very exaggerated handshake gesture. You can count on me. I, your sensei, Kunuo, will educate you in the ways of the Opie Dragon. Kunuo has a determined look as she smiles victoriously. Ophis on the other hand, thinking for a moment in all seriousness, the black-haired girl simply nods while maintaining her stoicism. Yay! It's settled then. Mom, this pretty little girl is my new best friend, Kay? Ophis tilts her head at Kunuo while pointing to herself. Immediately extinguishing her foxfire, the defeated-looking mother shows off a forced smile. Honey, this is not a little girl, she is, Issei interrupts. Ophis. The black-haired loli turns her head and stares directly into the boy's eyes. Keeping a straight face, Issei speaks. I am not interested in fighting Valley or joining the Chaos Brigade. Ophis simply nods. She then turns her head back toward the TV. Feeling annoyed, Issei looks at Yasaka as she sits down next to Issei. Yasaka smiles nervously. Let me try this time. Issei nods in frustration. Ophis-san. Again, Ophis turns her head and looks at Yasaka. Why are you here? Ophis then looks past Yasaka and over toward Kuroka, who is still standing near the entrance. Yasaka trains her eyes in that direction as does Issei. Kuroka, noticing that all eyes were on her, simply smiles malevolently. Nya. Oh, well, see, it's not my fault. She just crawled out of a communication circle. It was creepy, like something from that movie, The Ring. Also, since when can you use a communication circle like that? Like, who just crawls out of those things? Is it even possible? Yasaka and Issei both roll their eyes. Ophis turns around and continues to watch the television show as Kunuo starts to sing the Opie Dragon song. Scene: Dr. Kellogg's insane asylum. Underworld. On what looks to be an exercise bicycle, we can see Rias as she is pedaling away. She has a plethora of tubes and wires attached to her along with a breathing apparatus. Nothing in this room was modern. If anything, this room held nothing but technologies that should be otherwise, be in a museum. As Rias is breathing heavily, we can see no other than Dr. Kellogg. He is pressing a few buttons and turning a few dials. Don't you worry, little princess. I am an expert in my field and I can assure you that I will cure you. Rias attempts to reply, however her breathing mask prevents her. Laughing to himself, Dr. Kellogg continues. Yes, I am sure that you feel as though you simply are incurable. Well, my dear, I am here to prove otherwise. Let me tell you something, good bowels are the pinnacle of good health. After that, a strict diet, free of the flesh of animals, will aid in the cleansing of those humorous bowels of yours. Once the humors are expelled, we can then begin the next level of your treatment. Oh, right, look at the time. Nurse, it's time for patient Gremory's yogurt treatment. Rias shakes her head no as she attempts to gasp. First, previous ch 14 of 61. Next, chapter 15. The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DxD fanfiction. Chapter 15. Opie. Scene: Yasaka Castle. A short while later, we can see Yasaka and Issei, cuddling together on the couch, as Issei is sipping a cup of coffee while scratching his head. Meanwhile, Kuroka is sitting on the other side of Issei while drinking sake out of a bowl. She seems to be leaning against the boy as he seems oblivious. Staring at the television screen, Issei continues to reminisce about past moments while recording the program. Ophis and Kunuo are still sitting on the ground, directly in front of the TV as the little fox continues to explain the premise of the episode. Feeling a tighter grip on his arm, Issei looks toward his left to see Yasaka blushing. Trying to not blush himself, Issei smiles and nods. Yes, Yasaka-sama. Responding with a wink, the blonde woman speaks in a soft yet seductive tone. It's almost as if you are spending an early morning with your family, isn't it? Not able to contain a blush any longer, Issei's smile turns nervous. Yeah, Yasaka-san. Well, yeah. Attempting to look back at the television screen, Issei's eyes are met with a pair of little golden and little gray eyes. Widening his eyes in surprise, Issei flinches. Ophis immediately points at Issei. This causes the teen to flinch yet again. Oh, Ophis. The black-haired lolicon stands up while Kuno has a puzzled look. Having the slightest of smirks, Ophis speaks. I understand now. Yes. It makes perfect sense now. This is not a problem. The entire room tilted their heads in bewilderment. Ophis now looks at Yasaka. She then turns her gaze down toward her chest. Ophis nods. She then turns her gaze toward Kuroka and then her chest. Again, Ophis nods. As the ending credits are playing on the television, the word, Opie, continues to repeat itself. Ophis then points at the TV and nods again. Yes, I understand now. Very well, Kunuo replies, you do? Ophis looks down at the little fox. You should move, sensei. Nodding and smiling, the little blonde girl jumps up and skips off toward Issei. Nodding, Ophis looks down toward the floor as her body is completely engulfed by an infinite amount of black and outstretched arms with hands attached. After a quick purple flash, a pillar of black smoke was left over. Kuno sits in between her mother and Issei while watching the magic show. As the smoke clears, a silhouette of a woman can be seen. Just from the outline, this female was clearly endowed in all of the right places. Tall and slim with amazing hips, not to mention that rack. You could compare this body to that of Yasaka and Kuroka, but taller. Everyone in the room has their eyes wide and their jaws agape. As if the smoke wasn't there in the first place, we can now see a much bigger version of Ophis. She is still wearing her gothic Lolita outfit, however. The exposed parts of her breasts that only had cross-like bandages on the nipples were replaced. Now on each boob, we can see a silver nipple armor of sorts. Each armor is adorned in the symbol of the Ouroboros. Essentially, we are looking at two snakes that are devouring their own tails, for reference. Pulling another large black strand of hair from her gray eyes, Ophis speaks. In a deeper feminine voice, "I understand now. As I said, not a problem." Kunuo was the first to say something. "No, not fair. You're supposed to be my little best friend. I am older than you. You're supposed to be my minion. Now you look like that old lady, Kuroka." Forming a tick mark, the Neko responds, "I do not look old. I am in my prime and I am very fertile." Issei, gaining a nervous smile. Issei looks away from Ophis to now Kuroka. Not being able to help it, Issei begins to giggle. "I'm insane, that's it. This is what going crazy must feel like, haha." Diedrich interrupts Issei's thoughts. "Welcome to my world, partner. I would say that I feel sorry for you, but then again, I forget. What is the name that everyone calls me nowadays? Oh, that's right, Boob Dragon. Now you get to suffer the insanity I had to endure all these years. Ha ha ha." Shaking his head in annoyance, Issei relays his thoughts. "Stupid lazy dragon. It's not my fault that you don't enjoy the finer things in life." Scene: Gremory Mansion. Sirzex is laying in her large bed while cuddling with her wife, Grafia. The large projector screen is playing reruns of the "Oh Pi Dragon" series. Sirzex is sitting upward with her back against the headboard as Grafia has her head on the redhead's large chest. "Oh Grafia, I fear that we may never see him again. I know it's an irrational fear, but I can't help but think of a few what-ifs." Grafia nods. I know, I sometimes think the same thing. Personally, I wish we could have spent more time with Issei." Sirzex replies, "Yeah, and the sad thing is, we could have. But we were so concerned about what my sister would think." Grafia hugs her wife tighter. "It's going to be all right, I have this feeling. Even if we are unable to track him, I am sure that this event that Azazel-sama has planned, well, I think that it will have results." Gabriel herself was interested in finding the boy. Powerful existences such as hers, just imagine the possibilities. Grafia then scowls. Sirzex replies, "Yeah, that's all good and all. However, the angel's price is far too high for my liking." Grafia is nodding with a scowl. Almost forgot about that part. First, previous ch 15 of 61. Next, chapter 16. The Betrayal of a Lifetime. A DXD fanfiction. Chapter 16. Gotta find something for 3 wishes? Sounds cliché. Scene: Dr. Kellogg's insane asylum. Underworld. In a large arboretum, a red-headed Rias Gremory is taking what looks to be a casual stroll. Wearing her patient garbs, the woman looks to have little emotion on her face. Stopping for a moment while looking at a large plant, Rias begins to think. "Issei, I am sorry. I am so very sorry. But that won't stop me. That won't stop me from getting you back. I will jump through their hoops, I will play the game, but I assure you, when I get out, I will be quite insane. For you, my love, I will go mad." Rias begins to giggle, which turns into an all-out hysterical laugh. Wahahahahaha. We can see a few nurses walking quickly toward Rias. One of the nurses, who is wearing a white, turn-of-the-century medical outfit, is brandishing a large and old-fashioned syringe. The other, who is wearing a similar uniform, is holding what looks to be a large turkey baster in one hand and a large glass container in the other. This container seemed to contain a white and viscous substance. The label on the jar reads, "Yogurt 2 lbs." Rias stops laughing and gasps. Scene: Hyodo residence. We pan into Issei's old bedroom. On his large California king-sized bed, we can see a multitude of women laying on it. Akeno, Kaneko, Irina, Zenobia, Ravel and Rosweiss were all laying shoulder to shoulder, using each other as body pillows. In most cases, this scene would sound quite erotic, however the aura, once felt, would immediately sour the mood. In this dark and dismal room full of nothing but memory, we can feel the depression and regret radiating from all of the girls. Knock knock, Akeno lifts her head and opens her eyes. Yes. Hearing Issei's mother from the other side of the door, the woman replies. Akeno dear, when was the last time any of you had a meal? Please come downstairs and have a late breakfast with Mr. Hyodo and myself. We know something is wrong, so you can talk about it with us. If our Issei did something stupid, once again, well, I apologize on behalf of my very perverted son. Akeno gains a tick mark. Issei did nothing wrong. Shaking her thoughts away, the ex-queen of the Gremory house now plasters a fake smile to her lips. No thank you Ms. Hyodo. All of us ate earlier, we are just tired from training at the temple is all. And no, your son is. Ms. Hyodo waits for a moment then replies, my son is? As a tear starts to make its way out of the left eye of the half-angel, half-devil, Akeno chokes the rest of her sentence out. Your son is amazing and you should be proud. I can tell you that I am. We can see Ms. Hyodo staring at the door with a puzzled look. Issei, amazing. Well I'll be, but to tell me to be proud of my own son. Of course I am proud. He's my son. Nodding to herself, Ms. Hyodo decides to head back downstairs while thinking, where is my son, now that I think of it? Scene, Yasaka Castle. All I can say is, you got, well, big. Ophis seemed to have appeared only inches from Issei using whatever magic or law-bending ability in her possession. Jumping and flinching from the sudden scare, Issei pulls Kuno in closer to him. Kuno is looking up, however she is unable to see Ophis's face as her large assets prevented such things from happening. Responding to Issei's comment, Ophis nods. From what I've observed, this form is something that you would personally find desirable. This pleases me as I simply had to adjust the physical age of this existing body. This pleases me. It is agreeable that you didn't force me to work too hard on a body that you would find attractive. Why does this make me feel nervous, or is it flattery? I am unsure. You, sensei, what is this that I am feeling? Issei has his jaw agape at the infinite dragon's declaration. Meanwhile, Kunuo is attempting to jump up and down. Attempting to meet the eyes of her new best buddy, Yasaka is at a loss for words as she simply watches the scene in front of her. Kuroka doesn't seem to be paying any mind as she is attempting to change the channel on the TV in frustration. Why is the same thing on every channel? Ophis, Issei, Yasaka and Kuno all turn their heads in the direction of the television once again. Yet another picture of Issei Hyodo was stretched across the entire monitor with large letters in red posted below. Kunuo runs up to the TV and begins to read in excitement. The rest of the group stay put in confusion and a bit of worry. As of this moment, Issei Hyodo is the underworld's most wanted. Many officials from the higher-ups believe that the Red Dragon Emperor was taken against his will and might be incarcerated. Unclear is any further information involving the possible location or faction involved with the kidnapping. However, this brings us to another new announcement. As of this moment, our station, including other sister stations, will be broadcasting our first ever Opie Dragon Hunt. The monitor now flickers to a few locations within the underworld as a newscaster starts to speak up. All are welcome to join the first ever hunt for the Opie Dragon. Groups of no less than 5 will register at these locations. You will then be assigned a camera crew to follow your whereabouts and conduct interviews. The group that finds the Red Dragon Emperor, and brings him back, unharmed, will receive a personal favor from each of the great biblical pantheons. That's right folks, 3 wishes. Imagine the possibilities. Please follow the information below for any questions you might have. With that, at a future date, we will have a time and place to begin the broadcast. Until then, thank you for your time and have a great afternoon. All wishes must be approved before being granted. Limitations apply. Please go to 666.net for further information. All wishes must be in accordance with standards which are upheld by Azazel Incorporated. Azazel Incorporated, an LLC with an emphasis of limited liability. Issei chokes. Yasaka has her hand on Issei's back, lightly patting it. Calm down Issei darling. Everything will be alright. Issei looks back up at Yasaka and smiles. No, I don't think it will. Issei and Yasaka break their gaze and look toward Ophis. This will cause unwanted attention. Even with your abilities, Fox, there are pantheons and entities that would find your barriers and illusions to be nothing less than child's play. Yasaka gains a tick mark. First, previous ch 16 of 61 next.